Let me tell you something that don't get said enough. Peace is expensive. It's not sold in stores. You can't buy it online, and nobody else can give it to you. But when you live alone, when it's just you, your thoughts, your silence, you learn the value of that peace. You hear your own voice. And that's the first step toward power. Let me tell you something real, something people don't always want to hear. Peace, real peace, is expensive. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about emotional cost, mental cost, the kind of cost that can't be counted in dollars, but in nights of anxiety, arguments, sacrifices, compromises you weren't ready to make. See, the world teaches us early on that relationships are the prize, that if you're alone, something must be wrong with you. But I'm here to flip that script. I'm here to tell you that sometimes living alone beats any relationship, because peace is a treasure that no relationship can promise if you're not already rooted in it yourself. When you live alone, there are no masks to wear, nobody to impress, no roles to play. You wake up with your own thoughts and you go to bed the same way. And that silence, that stillness, that's where clarity starts. That's where healing begins. That's when you start hearing things, not noise from the world, not other people's expectations or needs, but your own voice, your own soul. And the more time you spend in that space, the louder that voice gets. The voice that says, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. You learn to trust that voice. And let me tell you, when you can trust yourself, that's when you become unstoppable. See, the thing is, peace doesn't come with just being around people. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes people steal your peace in the name of love. They drain your energy, demand your time, shake your stability, and you call it romance. But it's not. It's just noise dressed in intimacy. Because if a relationship costs you your peace, then it's too expensive. I don't care how good it looks on Instagram. I don't care what your mama says or what your friends think. If it's costing you your peace of mind, your ability to think clearly, to sleep easy, to breathe without tension, then you are overpaying. People ask me all the time, don't you get lonely? And I say, no, not when I have peace. Because there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone means you're in control. Being lonely means you've lost connection with yourself. See the difference? A man or woman who can sit in silence and be content is a person who has learned something most people run from. And most people do run. They run into arms, into beds, into situationships and distractions just to avoid facing the silence. But that silence, that's where the power is. Now, I ain't Stan versus heresy. I wouldn't just, there's billions of books looked at this. There's tons of studies on value. Known freaking explains value. There is you want to know what real strength is? It's not how much you can bench press. It's not how many people want you. Real strength is walking into your home, closing that door, and being okay with who's left in the room. Just you. That takes discipline. That takes healing. That takes courage. Because once you've built peace within yourself, you won't settle for anything less from the outside world. That's why living alone isn't a weakness. It's a test. And when you pass it, when you truly embrace that solitude, you stop fearing it. You stop needing noise to feel full. You realize that peace is not the absence of people, it's the presence of self. And that kind of peace, that kind of grounded, unshakable peace, that's something no relationship can give you if you don't already have it. So no, don't run from solitude. Don't rush into connection just because it feels safer. Because there is nothing safer than knowing yourself. And sometimes living alone is exactly what you need to become the person you were always meant to be. Too many people rush into relationships without truly knowing who they are. And I'm not talking about the surface stuff, your favorite color, what music you like, or even your job title. I'm talking about the deep stuff, the kind of self-acknowledge that comes only from sitting with yourself in the quiet and asking the hard questions. What do I stand for? What do I refuse to tolerate? What are my dreams, my fears, my boundaries? When you live alone, you are forced to confront these questions without distractions, without someone else's expectations clouding your vision. And that confrontation, as uncomfortable as it may seem, is the foundation for every healthy relationship you will ever have. You see, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't build a house without a solid foundation. Yet too many people jump into relationships trying to find themselves through someone else, hoping the other person will fill in their gaps, complete their puzzles. But that's a dangerous game, because when you don't know who you are, you become a shadow of what you could be, molding yourself to fit the needs or desires of others. And at the end of the day, you're left feeling lost, confused, maybe even resentful. Living alone teaches you the most important lesson of all, that your worth isn't dependent on anyone else's presence. You learn to like your own company. You learn to become your own best friend, your own cheerleader, your own source of comfort. And that self-reliance doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you more attractive. Because confidence rooted in self-awareness is magnetic. It's real. It's honest. It doesn't need validation from outside sources because it already knows its value. When you know yourself, you set standards that aren't negotiable. You recognize red flags early because you understand what is healthy and what isn't. You stop settling for less than you deserve because you know your worth. And in that space of knowing, you attract relationships that are built on respect, trust, and mutual growth, not on neediness or desperation. Think about it. How often do we hear stories about people who lose themselves in relationships? They give up their dreams, their time, their identity just to keep someone else happy. And when the relationship ends, they don't just lose the other person, they lose a part of themselves they never took the time to find in the first place. Living alone, on the other hand, gives you the chance to build a strong, clear sense of self before you invite anyone else in. It's like preparing the soil before planting seeds. Without that preparation, nothing good can grow. I'm not saying relationships are bad or unnecessary. Far from it. But what I am saying is this: know yourself first. Because the people who come into your life will either add to your growth or take away from it. And you have to be clear enough to recognize which is which. When you live alone, you develop that clarity. You become the gatekeeper of your own heart. So if you're afraid of being alone, I want you to reconsider. Being alone is not a punishment or a sign of failure. It's an opportunity. It's a time for you to meet the most important person you'll ever know, yourself. And when you do, when you really know who you are, you'll walk into every relationship from a place of strength, not need. You'll choose connection, not dependence. You'll be whole, not half. And that, my friend, is how you create something real, something lasting, because it starts with you. Let me be clear. Independence is not loneliness. Far too often, people confuse the two. They think being alone means being lonely, isolated, forgotten. But that's a lie the world tells you to keep you dependent, to keep you unsettled. Because there's a big difference between being empty and being whole by yourself. One comes from fear, the other comes from strength. When you live alone, you learn to move on your own terms. You answer to no one but your purpose, your values, your own rhythm. You wake up, make decisions, and carry out your days without needing permission, without the weight of someone else's agenda hanging over your head. And that's freedom. That's power. That's living with integrity. Loneliness is a feeling. It's a wound. It's what happens when your connection to yourself or others is broken or shallow. But independence, real independence, comes from knowing you can stand on your own 2 feet. You can be alone and feel full because you've cultivated a deep well inside that's always there to draw from. You've built a relationship with yourself that's solid and reliable. And that's not something everyone has. When you're alone and whole, you don't seek validation in the eyes of others. You don't need someone else's approval to feel worthy or loved. You don't chase relationships to fill a void. Instead, you attract people who want to be with you because they see the fullness you already possess. You choose who gets to enter your life, not out of desperation, but out of discernment. That's a rare and powerful place to be. Think about how many people settle for toxic relationships because they're afraid of being alone. They trade peace for company, respect for attention, freedom for control. And every time, they lose a little piece of themselves. Because when you live in fear of solitude, you become vulnerable to anything that promises relief. Even if it's poison, dressed as comfort. But living alone, it teaches you to protect your energy like a lion guards its pride. You learn to say no to what doesn't serve you. You become selective, not because you're picky or proud, but because you respect the sacred space you've created around your soul. You stop giving away your power for temporary fixes or cheap thrills. There's an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Living alone is not about cutting people out. It's about going fast enough and strong enough to build a foundation where others can stand with you, not lean on you. It's about being the kind of person who brings value to a partnership rather than looking for someone to prop you up. This kind of independence is not lonely. It's liberating. It's the difference between surviving and thriving. It's a mindset that says, I am enough, even when no one else is around to say it for me. That's a powerful declaration, and one that changes everything. So don't fear living alone. Don't mistake it for loneliness. Embrace it as a training ground for your soul. Build your strength, your clarity, your peace. Because when you do, you'll never settle for less than you deserve, in any relationship or in life itself. Your energy is your most valuable currency. Let me say it again. Your energy is your currency. Every minute of your day, every thought you entertain, every conversation you have, every place you go, it all costs you energy. And energy spent unwisely is energy lost forever. When you live alone, you learn to protect that energy like a precious asset. You become a gatekeeper, a guardian of your own peace and progress. Think about how many people give their energy away to situations and people who don't deserve it. They get caught up in drama, distractions, and demands that drain their spirit. They say yes when they should say no. They invest in relationships that pull them down instead of lift them up. And then they wonder why they feel exhausted, why they lose focus, why their dreams start slipping away. Living alone forces you to be deliberate about who and what you allow into your space. You develop a sixth sense for energy vampires, the people who drain your light without giving anything back. You start saying no to toxic friendships, meaningless small talk, and obligations that don't align with your goals. You stop apologizing for protecting your time and your mental health. When you're alone, your energy belongs to you, pure and simple. You decide how it's spent. And that freedom is powerful because your energy fuels everything: your creativity, your motivation, your relationships, your well-being. If you don't protect it, you can't perform at your best. You can't be the person you're meant to be. This isn't about being selfish or disconnected. It's about respect. Respect for yourself and for your journey. It's about understanding that you have a responsibility to yourself to stay strong, focused, and healthy. When you guard your energy, you're not just preserving yourself. You're also creating the space for better connections and deeper relationships in the future. Remember, your energy sets the tone for everything in your life. If you allow chaos and negativity to invade your space, it's like inviting a storm inside your home. But if you cultivate calm, clarity, and positivity, you create an environment where you and those you care about can thrive. So living alone isn't about isolation or deprivation. It's about intentionality. It's about choosing peace over chaos, growth over distraction, and yourself over the noise of the world. It's a daily practice of saying, this is my energy. I will spend it wisely. That's the kind of power that no relationship can give you if you don't already have it. When you live alone, you learn to honor your energy, and in doing so, you honor your life. And that makes all the difference. Solitude is not the enemy. In fact, it's one of the greatest teachers you'll ever have. When you live alone, you come face to face with yourself. No distractions, no escapes, no quick fixes. And that's where growth happens. Growth that's real, that's deep, that transforms you from the inside out. Most people fear solitude because it forces them to confront what they've been avoiding: their mistakes, their fears, their regrets, their hopes. It's uncomfortable. It's raw. It can feel like standing in front of a mirror that doesn't lie. But that discomfort is necessary because without it, you stay stuck. Without it, you never break free from the patterns that hold you back. When you live alone, you get to do the hard work of reflection. You start asking yourself the questions that matter. What do I want from life? What kind of person do I want to be? What am I willing to fight for? You listen to your inner voice without the noise of other people's opinions drowning it out. And in that quiet, you find clarity. Solitude is like a gym for the soul. Just like your body needs exercise to grow stronger, your spirit needs moments of stillness and focus to develop resilience, wisdom, and confidence. The more time you spend alone, the more you train yourself to be comfortable in your own skin, to trust your instincts, to stand firm in your values, to hold your ground when life gets tough. There's a truth many overlook. The person who's never been alone has never truly been tested. And untested strength is just a story you tell yourself, not a reality you live. Challenges come to everyone, but the strength to face them often comes from having faced your own inner battles first. When you live alone, you build that strength. You learn how to be your own support system, your own source of encouragement. And that kind of strength doesn't just help you survive, it helps you thrive. It gives you the confidence to take risks, to pursue your dreams, to set boundaries. It helps you recognize what's worth your time and what isn't. It helps you refuse anything that doesn't honor your journey. Solitude teaches patience too. It reminds you that growth takes time, that not everything happens on your schedule. Sometimes you have to sit in the discomfort, trust the process, and keep moving forward, even when the path isn't clear. So don't run from solitude. Don't fear the moments when you're alone. Embrace them. Use them as an opportunity to grow, to heal, to prepare yourself for whatever comes next. Because when you cultivate that kind of inner strength, you become unstoppable. And when you do eventually step into a relationship, you bring that strength with you. You bring clarity, confidence, and a deep understanding of who you are. You don't lose yourself in the other person because you already know yourself. You don't need the relationship to complete you because you are already whole. In the end, solitude is not a punishment. It's a privilege. It's a gift you give yourself to become the best version of who you are meant to be. And living alone beats any relationship if it means gaining that kind of growth and power. If you can be happy alone, you'll never be happy together. That's a hard truth, but it's a truth that will save you a lifetime of heartache and confusion if you take it to heart. Far too many people look to relationships as the source of their happiness, their validation, their worth. They chase after connection, hoping it will fill a void, hoping it will fix what feels broken inside. But no one else can make you happy. Happiness is not something you get from another person, it's something you create within yourself. When you're not comfortable being alone, you become dependent. You lean on others to prop you up emotionally. You lose sight of your own needs and desires because you're so focused on keeping someone else close. And that kind of dependence is a shaky foundation for any relationship. It's like building a house on quicksand. Eventually, it's going to sink, and you'll be left wondering what went wrong. But living alone teaches you how to be enough. It teaches you to look inward for validation and love. It teaches you that your worth is not tied to your relationship status. You start to understand that you don't need someone else to complete you because you are already whole. That wholeness becomes the cornerstone of every connection you make moving forward. When you know you're enough, you don't settle for less than you deserve. You don't tolerate disrespect or neglect. You don't stay in situations that drain your spirit or diminish your light. You demand more from yourself and from those you allow into your life. And that demand isn't about arrogance or pride. It's about honoring your value, your dignity, and your dreams. Being happy alone also gives you the freedom to choose relationships that truly serve you. Instead of rushing to fill a void, you walk into partnerships from a place of abundance. You bring love, not neediness. You bring confidence, not insecurity. You bring peace, not chaos.
There's a power in that kind of presence. It changes the dynamic of any relationship. It turns two people coming together into a union of equals, where each person supports the other's growth instead of trying to fix or complete each other. That's where true partnership lives, in the space between two whole people who choose to share their lives, not to fill emptiness, but to amplify joy. And if you don't learn to be happy alone, you risk losing yourself in someone else. You risk giving away your power, your voice, your identity. And when that happens, no relationship, no matter how promising it seems at first, can survive for long. So if you're still searching for happiness in another person, stop. Start searching for it inside yourself. Start cultivating joy in your own company. Find peace in your own silence. Celebrate your own accomplishments. Build a life that you love on your own. And watch how everything else begins to fall into place. Because happiness is not something you find, it's something you create. And the first step to creating it is learning to live well alone. That's the real victory. That's the real freedom. That's the foundation for any relationship worth having. So, no, I'm not saying relationships are bad, but I am saying this. If you can't thrive alone, you'll drown together. Find your light, find your peace, find your purpose. Then, and only then, choose who you share it with. Because living alone doesn't mean you're missing out. Sometimes it means you're ahead of the game.